Welcome to the Beau Show, the home of faith, family, and freedom. Well, it's Valentine's Day, folks, and firstly, I want to wish all of you lovers out there a joyful day. As you can see, I have my Valentine's Day balloon behind me. Wait a minute. Are those Chinese satellites on that balloon? I knew it. They've been spying on me this whole time. And here I was thinking that they were just sending me a gesture of goodwill this Valentine's Day. Oh well, it wasn't the first time they've done this and probably won't be the last. But that's okay, because today's topic will be all about that balloon and what China is doing. Spying can come in many forms. We know that Christine Fang, aka Fang Fang, was a human spy that targeted politics at the local level in California so that those politicians could be influenced by China as they made their way up through the ranks. One of her biggest targets was Democrat Congressman Eric Swalwell, who has since been removed from the House Intelligence Committee due to a compromise in national security due to his relationship with Fang Fang. Spying can be embedded in technology, just like Chinese company ByteDance has done with TikTok, which is also now regarded as a privacy and national security threat, even though it has been one of the most used apps in all of history, leaving kids in particular very vulnerable. What better way to spy than to create an app that everyone wants to use, especially kids who have no clue what's going on? We know that countries use high-flying aircraft, drones, satellites, and other technology to spy, but one of the latest examples was the white high-altitude balloon that flew right across the United States, collecting lots of information before finally being shot down off of the Atlantic coast. The balloon was first noticed around February 2nd by an observer in Montana. The U.S. military had observed the balloon traveling over Alaska's Aleutian Islands on January 28th, and it proceeded to traverse parts of northwest Canada and all across the continental U.S. until it was shot down by an Air Force jet 8 days later. Secretary of State Antony Blinken quickly canceled his trip to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss the already tenuous relationship between the two nations. So one of the big headlines here is that observers on the ground and in commercial aircraft spotted that balloon before the Pentagon said anything about it. Why did that happen? Montana is home to land-based nuclear missile silos, which the balloon had ample reconnaissance opportunity to collect. The Pentagon admitted that the spy balloon traveled over sensitive areas of the U.S. What's more, the Chinese were able to maneuver this balloon over these sensitive areas. So they were learning where we detected it, how we detected it, how much time it took us to detect it, and how much leeway they were given in terms of American leadership's response. Look at how they were given 8 whole days to traverse sensitive military areas. The Chinese have had this technology for several years, which means they have been testing this for quite some time. SIGINT technology intercepts our signals and command and control, how we communicate between our various military bases. While they are collecting signals, they could also be observing what was seen from air to ground. Collecting the debris from this balloon will perhaps tell a better story of what was intercepted and sent back to China. Our own Pentagon increased funding for high-altitude inflatables in part because of their potential to track hypersonic missiles, which are being developed by China and Russia. This is not a good sign that the Pentagon is just now developing the technology that the Chinese have been using for years, clearly. This balloon reconnaissance technology was employed at the height of the Cold War. But it seems that, as history repeats itself once again, a similar threat has seen a resurgence with this capability. Now, in terms of the response, Biden was briefed about it, but was advised to wait, as shooting it down could cause potential damage on land due to the debris. But here's my question. When they first detected the balloon in our airspace, it was in Alaska, which is a vast wilderness that is largely uninhabited. They waited days and days until it was in Canada, and then in Idaho, and then Montana, all over the country, until it finally went off the coast of South Carolina. So if the reasoning to delay the destruction of the balloon is to minimize debris potential, it had been in an area at first detection where the damage would have been minimal. Icy water would have also made the cleanup and the retrieval of that debris easier and posed very little threat to any people on the ground. But no, the Pentagon and Biden waited a glorious 8 days of balloon travel, and not just any balloon travel, carefully maneuvered travel, before it was shot down. It was like we were all watching a comet or something. What did China say? Well, their ministry said that it was a meteorological balloon, stating, quote, China regrets that the airship strayed into the United States due to force majeure. China will continue to maintain communication with the U.S. to properly handle the unexpected situation caused by force majeure, unquote. Now, force majeure, or natural events, is what they're saying. Yeah, sure. But they changed their tune after the balloon was shot down, calling it a gross overreaction and a serious violation of international practice. So, do we assume then that if we had a spy balloon over Beijing, that they would just let it keep floating on by? I don't think so. This is one huge whopper coming out of China's foreign ministry. Now, to save face, Biden officials claim that 3 Chinese balloons entered U.S. airspace during the Trump administration. But Trump officials Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, DNI Director John Ratcliffe, and others have all dismissed those claims. Here's how Ratcliffe responded.
John, the Biden administration is trying to minimize this explosive situation in this past week, and the Department of Defense is claiming that there were 3 balloons, Chinese spy balloons, that entered the United States airspace during the Trump administration, and that they were not shot down and they were not disclosed. Can you please tell us the truth and if that's true?
Well, it's not true. I can refute it. Former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper refuted it yesterday. Former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo has refuted it. But Maria, the American people can refute it for themselves. Do you remember during the Trump administration when photographers on the ground and commercial airline pilots were talking about a spy balloon over the United States that people could look up and see even with the naked eye, and that a media that hated Donald Trump wasn't reporting? I don't remember that either, because it didn't happen. As I said to you earlier, this was unprecedented. We have never had a circumstance where an adversary has had spy craft over our country, our continental United States, posing a threat for the better part of a week straight. And that's why I said to you before, not only is it unprecedented, but the damage from this is incalculable, both from an intelligence standpoint and the possible payloads. You talked a little bit earlier about the different types of payloads that a stratospheric balloon could carry. Those possibilities are limited only by your imagination. But what we do know is none of those are possible to be deployed against the United States if a stratospheric balloon isn't allowed to traipse across our countryside for 4 straight days, something that has never happened before. But beyond that intelligence damage, Maria, the other thing is that the damage that it wasn't just 320 million Americans that were watching this balloon, paralyzed for a week. It was Russia. It was Iran. It was North Korea. It was American adversaries who also were surprised that this type of thing could happen and are frankly thrilled at the possibilities of what they could do to deploy the same type of stratospheric balloon or device over the continental mainland and have this kind of slow, weak, timid, late, frankly, terrible response by the Biden administration.
So it's clear that the Biden administration always tries to use comparisons to the Trump administration to deflect. But even if balloons were evading our radar, the naked eye can see it, and so can commercial aircraft. And we would have heard about that, don't you think? China has boasted about developing technology for modern airships. Balloons have been developed by Aviation Industry Corp of China, also known as AVIC for short, which the Trump administration designated a military end-user company, of which some of their operations have been already sanctioned. I mention that because the balloon was shot down over water off the coast of South Carolina, 47 feet down. It will be kind of hard to retrieve all of the debris and study it. as opposed to the Alaskan or Arctic ice. The Pentagon said China is operating a fleet of surveillance balloons, which have been spotted previously over Latin America, Europe, and Asia. High-altitude balloons have been seen over Taiwan and Japan in recent years, including in 2020, when one was spotted over Japan's northern Tohoku region with a cross-shaped object suspended below it, just like my Valentine's Day balloon behind me. And according to experts, the reason balloons are ideal is that they are cheaper to make, and they have a longer loiter time than a satellite, for instance, which means moving at slower speeds to be able to observe better and for longer periods of time. Tensions between the U.S. and China could not be worse right now, really, especially as the conversation continues about Taiwan's vulnerability, with brand new Speaker Kevin McCarthy intending to visit Taiwan, which the Chinese, of course, will see as a threat, while Secretary of State Blinken was supposed to go visit Beijing for the first such event in about 4 years.